Curve Lake, Rama, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Old Soleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. We acknowledge a shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original Indigenous inhabitants as the stewards of its land and water since time immemorial. Could I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please, of May 8th, moved by Adele, seconded by Paul. Thank you, Paul. Anybody opposed? Motion is carried. Any declarations of conflict of interest from any parties here, either now at the beginning of the meeting or should they show up during the meeting, because we start talking about something to put you in conflict of interest?
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to let you know that Walt is trying to join the meeting. He's just having an internet issue, so we're working on it.
Thanks, Aaron. The next item is the consent agenda, which consists of the April 10th board minutes, the county librarian's report of today, and the circulation statistics with totals for the last couple of months. Anybody have any questions on any of the items on the consent agenda that you'd like to pull off for discussion? Seeing none, can I have a motion then to approve the consent agenda for this meeting? Moved by Jen, seconded by Cecil Ryle. Not Cliff, as I recall you as last.
Also known as Cliff.
Okay, so that brings us to financial report, or any, we don't have any working committee reports. That item is on the agenda as a placeholder, but we always ask. So we'll move now to the financial reports. And I don't know if KPMG is on the line. Aaron, are they there?
I'm just letting him now.
Great. So we're going to do the KPMG audit report first so that they can get on their way, and then we'll come back to the financials from Andrea. Okay. Oscar, are you on? There you are.
Hello, everybody.
Are you still living in Sudbury?
I am living in Sudbury, but currently sitting in Windsor.
Well, my hometown and where I went to university, good two places to be.
Which one, Sudbury or Windsor?
Sudbury hometown, went to University of Windsor.
Okay, cool.
Oh, a long, long time ago. You probably weren't even born then.
I was talking to somebody about the recent changes that the government has made to capital gains. And we were talking about something called V-Day, which happened in 1971.
Yes.
So I turned to the young fellow who was sitting in the room listening to me have this conversation. And I said, "When were you born?" And he said, 2000. And I went, you're not even old enough to be my kid. So time flies. So.
All right. Well, I was born in 1949, Oscar, so that's a long time ago.
Yeah, you got 20 years on me. So.
Okay. So we're going to turn it over to you, and you're going to give us the presentation and draft financial statements for the library for the last year, please.
Sounds good. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity to be here today. I'm assuming you can see the title page of the presentation of our financial statement report. So the KPMG has been retained to undertake the audit of the library board, and we are complete. So we've executed our audit in accordance with Canadian auditing standards, and these are the rules that govern how auditors undertake their processes and their procedures to form their opinion. We've conducted it based on materiality being the threshold of errors that you can absorb before you either require them to be corrected or you change your opinion. We use materiality for a number of different purposes. We use it for the purposes of calculating our sample size, but probably the most relevant use for the people on the board is it determines what's known as our posting threshold. And this is the level above which If we have any errors that are uncorrected, we actually have to report it to the board as part of this presentation. So consistent with other not-for-profit organizations, we typically calculate materiality as a percentage of prior year's revenues or expenses. And so we've used 3%, and it yields a materiality number of just under $39,000. The posting threshold, or the level for us to report to you today, is $1,900. And that effectively, ladies and gentlemen, is the level of precision that we have with respect to our audit. We are prepared to issue what's known as an unqualified audit opinion. This is the highest level of assurance that you can receive under Canadian auditing standards. So from a audit perspective, it really doesn't get better than this. There's three things that we need for completion of the audit. First off is we need to have the board actually approve the financial statements. There is a requirement under the standards for the client to accept the statements. We do need to receive a management representation letter, which is an attestation on the part of your staff that they've told us everything. And then lastly, we need to put our file together. And what this really means is we put in the final statements, we put in the representation letter, and then we're done. So the audit has gone well. There's no issues that we've identified that we need to have a conversation with you about today. There are no differences above our posting threshold. So when we describe this as a clean audit, this is about as clean as it gets. There's no issues with respect to internal controls that we've identified, so no concerns from a process perspective, no scope limitations or differences with management that have come up as well. So the audit really has gone well. In terms of the financial statements, the first statement is the statement of financial position. This is a summary of your assets, liabilities, and surplus at December 31st, 2023. What you will find first off is your structure in terms of how you manage what we call treasury functions, your bank account and your cash, is very consistent with other municipal library boards in that you leave your municipality to basically manage those treasury functions for you. And so basically outside of some small petty cash bank balances, you really don't maintain your own bank balances. You don't maintain your own reserves. Rather, these really go through the county. So what you'll find is that the County of Haliburton at the end of the year technically owes the library board $385,000. And what this is them holding on to your equity, your reserves, if you will. You will see that from a liability perspective, there's accounts payable and accrued liabilities. These are invoices and expenses incurred prior to year end, paid after year end, mostly related to payroll. Tangible capital assets represent your investment in your equipment, your facilities, your infrastructure. When you buy something, you put it on the books and you amortize it over the useful life. It's gone up by about $31,000 on a year-over-year basis. There was $145,000 of capital that you spent this year, which brings this number up. And the amortization expense, or the expensing of it, is $113,000, which brings this number down. So from an additions perspective, we've summarized below what they are. There's about $70,000 that you've invested in your collection materials to make sure that your collection stays current. $59,000 for a transit van to help you to move between the various branches, $13,000 in information technology, and $4,000 with respect to enhancements for your website. The other asset that I'd like to talk about is prepaid expenses, and you'll notice last year there was $26,000. This year there's nothing. Last year there were some subscription fees that you paid before year end. So these were 2023 subscription fees that you actually paid in 22. Because you paid them early, they were a prepaid expense. You don't have that timing this year. And so because of that, the prepaid expense has basically gone away. From a statement perspective, the next statement is your statement of operations, and this is a summary of your revenues and your expenditures during the year. You can see that total revenues have gone up by about $84,000 or 6%, and the biggest driver of this is the contribution from the county. Now, under the Public Libraries Act, municipal libraries are exceptionally restricted in terms of what you can charge for. And so because of that, there is always a high reliance with respect to the municipality to provide these funding for you. In terms of operating expenses, you can see your operating expenses have gone up by about $113,000 or 9%. The biggest chunk of this is with respect to wages and benefits of about $90,000, and then spending on minor capital. From an overall perspective, ladies and gentlemen, what you'll see is that 1.389 million of revenue and 1.349 of expenses gives you a surplus of about $41,000. That $41,000 gets added to your earlier surplus of 692, which forms your accumulated surplus or your accumulated net earnings over the period of about 733,000. So if you go to the earlier financial statement, what this $733,000 is made up of is $406,000 of equity inside your assets, your infrastructure, and the remaining balance is basically your net financial assets, which is the balance that the county is holding for you, less any payables that you have at year end. Just to put it in a bit of a different perspective, I've talked about amortization and capital expenditures. So when you look at your statements, what you have is you have the amortization expense, which is an accounting adjustment. It's spreading the cost of those assets over time. So you'll have the expense without having the cash. And then the capital additions, as I mentioned, you set them up on your balance sheet. So this surplus that we've talked about, this $41,000, really is an accounting surplus. It's not really how you budget. So what we've done is we've taken your financial statements and we've restated them to bring you sort of closer towards how you budget and more on a cash flow perspective. And what we do basically is we add back your amortization expense. So we back out the depreciation, and then we deduct the actual amount that you're spending in capital. And so what you'll find is on a cash adjusted basis, your surplus, well, 3 years ago was 22,000, last year was 81,000, this year was 8,000. So it's a different way of looking at your financial statements. And what I would suggest, ladies and gentlemen, this is more in line with how you actually budget. And so from our perspective, this $8,000 is pretty much break even. On $1.4 million, you've come in with about $8,000 of surplus, which is as close as you could get to breaking even without going under. Just to give you a bit of perspective as well, from a historical perspective, we wanted to highlight your results. And so what you can see is that from a revenue perspective, you've had fairly solid growth over the last 8 years. We can only go back as far as we had financial statements. We really weren't your auditors before 2017. But you can see it's a healthy growth and it's a healthy level of investment that you've been making from a revenue perspective. Your surplus outside of 2020 has generally been close to that break-even level. And the reason why I keep harping on this is because sometimes when people look at financial statements and they see surpluses, they would say, well, we're giving the library too much money because you're not spending it. You're actually just accumulating it up. And what you'll find once again is your surplus isn't really the $41,000 that's on your statement. It's about an $8,000 basis. 2020, admittedly, was a very strange year because of the pandemic and because a lot of the Safe Restart funding that would go out. So I would suggest to you that this is a blip. When we look at your surplus, once again, if we look at the red line is what's on your financial statements, the blue bar is what happens when you adjust it from a cash flow perspective. You can see that over the last 7 years, the library has done a really good job of operating in a manner that I would suggest to you is financially sustainable. You've had a small loss in 2017, a very small cash loss in 2019. But other than that, your results have been very close to the bottom line. You haven't been operating in a position where the amount of revenue that you're bringing in isn't enough to keep up with what you're bringing out the door. But you also haven't been accumulating significant surpluses that people would suggest that you're overfunded. And once again, I will strongly, strongly couch that 2020, because of the pandemic, was not a normal year. So just a bit of perspective historically. The other thing that I wanted to do is to provide some perspective on the library against some of the other county library systems that exist in the province of Ontario. I want to make a couple of caveats, if I may, before I go out. There's no real perfect comparator for the Haliburton County Library Board. And so there's always nuances that come into play here. So you have to be careful with respect to benchmarking because there's all sorts of differences that you have. I'll give you the example, and it's actually highlighted on this slide. According to Statistics Canada, you have more houses than people. And obviously that's not the case. What it reflects, though, is the very seasonal nature of your community and the fact that you have a number of people who transit in during different parts of the year. And so that's important to recognize, because when you go to other places, what you will notice is they have more people than households. So the first comment is your operations are very much shaped to a larger extent than the other municipalities by this seasonal nature. And what some people would suggest to you is that matters for libraries, because if I'm here year round, I may be more inclined to use your services than if I'm only here part-time during the year. It's also important not to necessarily look to express things on a per capita basis, because you may actually be understating things. The other thing that's important to recognize, and it's true with all county library systems that we've picked up, is for your population, you have a high number of branches and you have a high number of service points where people can get service, not necessarily just in a branch. And this is different than, for example, if I go to the town of Huntsville, which may have a population of 20,000 people and have one library branch, maybe two. You don't have that geographic concentration that larger, more urban areas have. You operate at a county level as opposed to a lower tier level. So your numbers are going to look different. And so we've highlighted that here, and you can see that all of the county systems that we've picked up, multiple service points, multiple branches. So in terms of the benchmarking, the province of Ontario publishes very good benchmarking with respect to library statistics, which we've taken. So these numbers are about a year old. They're 2022. And the first one that I wanted to suggest we thought was interesting for the board was how many active card holders do you have, both in terms of per household and per capita. And it's not the perfect term to use, but I always measure this, or I always suggest that this is a measure of your success from a presentation perspective. What percentage of the community actually uses the library enough to get a card, to be an active card holder? What you will find is this is where your population and per capita start to play into the mix, because what you'll notice is that from a per capita perspective, you have the highest number, but it's only those permanent residents. From a per household perspective, you're in the middle of the mark as well. So what you've done is you've actually done a good job from a penetration perspective in terms of servicing the community. And once again, and I'll let your CAO speak to this, but I would imagine it's more of a challenge when it's seasonal, because people will come in and come out without necessarily ingraining themselves in the community. So I think the reality is the fact that you're up there on a per capita basis, the fact that you're there on a per household basis actually bodes well as a measure of your penetration success. The second stat that we looked at is the weekly service hours per 10,000 population. And once again, this gets skewed by the number of residents that you have. But what you find is you actually have a very high service level standard. And once again, if you consider the fact that there's a disproportion there, it's probably suitable to cut this number in half, but you still have a level of service that's consistent with the upper end of the range that other libraries provide. And the reason why I think that's important to recognize is because of this slide. So despite the fact that you have a level of service that's consistent with or higher than other library boards, county systems that we've pulled into the mix, you actually have the lowest level of municipal support financially per household. And so you do a good level of service, you do a high level of service, you maintain multiple branches and multiple service points, you just do it less expensively than other county systems. And what you'll notice is for most of them, the amount of municipal support that's provided on a per household system is half to a third what the other municipalities are collecting. And so what this means, and I'm going to apologize for potentially oversimplifying this, you're giving a level of service that's consistent with or higher than other municipalities, but you're doing it cheaper. And the reason why we denominated this on a per household basis is because the tax levy is actually built in to household taxes. And so because of that, it's appropriate to denominate it on a per household basis because that actually ties with the funding. So that is a bit of an overview of your financial statements. That is an overview of some of your historical results and your financial performance. I hope that's provided a bit of, sorry, my computer's dying, so I'm just trying to plug it in while I'm on the phone. I hope that provides a bit of perspective, both on your statements and your performance as well. I just find it helpful sometimes to not necessarily just speak to the financial statements, but to talk about past trends and benchmarking. I'd like to thank you once again for allowing KPMG the opportunity to be of service to the library board. If there are any questions, more than happy to answer them at this time.
Any questions of anybody? I just have one. Oscar, did you receive or have got the draft management representation letter?
I will need to check my emails. To be honest with you, I've been in meetings all day. I have seen some emails come across. I believe we may have.
I should have asked Andrea that question, but
yeah, it was sent this afternoon.
okay.
Yeah.
It was. She tells me it was sent this afternoon, so you've got it.
Yeah. So we will date your financial statements today, and Andrew will have your finals tomorrow.
Thank you, everybody. No questions, I see. I have a motion, be it resolved that the Haliburton County Library Board accept auditor's presentation and draft financial statements as presented. So what Oscar went through was a high-level overview of the actual financial statements. They were attached to the agenda today, so you've got the actual numbers there. Thank you, Oscar, for that. Could I have a mover and seconder, please, for that motion? Moved by Adele, seconded by Jen. Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Oscar. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, can I just ask a question?
Of course you can.
And I wasn't trying to fill time, but would you like to continue to see that type of benchmarking in the presentations, or is it something that your CEO provides and you're kind of like, yeah, we don't really need it, Oscar, thanks?
Oscar, I'll tell you what, those benchmarks were outstanding, and we would really appreciate those being continued. They tell the true story of this small little library, how efficient we are and how well we're doing. So I, for one, would gladly want you to keep doing that.
Sounds good. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Take care.
Bye. Okay, that was very interesting. Okay, next item is we're going to go back and you're going to go with financial reports. Leah?
Yes. So the things are pretty on track. Just a few things to highlight. The annual survey data was submitted. So that is the massive amount of statistics that we have to share with the provincial government every year. And those are the stats that they end up using in the benchmarking that Oscar was showing to us. So that is submitted for last year. And so that is a requirement for us to get the provincial funding that we get for $120,000.
Which we'll get.
Which we'll get in December.
Just before a year.
Yeah. There is a change, so there is an item in the revenue line in the budget for federal funding for students. And after some discussion with the team, because of the transitions that we're going through in terms of staffing right now and retirements and people filling roles temporarily, we're not going to have the bandwidth within the admin team to hire and supervise summer students. So that does impact the revenue line. However, it also impacts the wages, so it balances out. The federal government pays half and we pay half. So in the end, it nets out with no problem. And the other thing to highlight is right towards the bottom, just that we have now received our Dorset collection. So we have 20 boxes of books and other items that have been received at the Stanhope branch.
I saw the pictures in the Friday report. The whole wall's full of books.
So Aaron and Cheryl have been up at Stanhope, and Cheryl a lot this week too, processing everything, getting it into the catalog, sorting it out, making sure that the items are all prepped and ready to go for Dorset. So that is quite exciting. That work is underway. And so you'll see that that is coming out of the budget there.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you for that. It was very, very good. I really like those reports, those Friday reports. They're informative, but they're also fun. You can tell you guys are having a good time here. That's nice to see. I have any questions from anybody? Okay. Hi, Walt. Nice to have you back. Be it resolved that the Haliburton County Public Library Board accepts the financial report as presented. Moved by Adele, seconded by Cease. Anybody opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. Now, we're going to do the marketing and communication presentation. Oh, by the way, I forgot to introduce people here at the beginning of the meeting. I asked the names because I didn't know who they were. I did not know. I didn't know who was who. Hillary on my left, on your right in the screen, and Tessa, who's going to do the presentation on my right, your left.
Yes.
All yours, Tessa. Thank you.
Erin has my slides up. So I'm just going to run you through the marketing strategy and brand voice documents. This is something that Chris had mentioned when we worked on the strategic plan, that a marketing plan would be kind of going hand in hand with that. So that's what this is. Next slide, Erin. Beautiful. So it was informed by the strategic plan, but also by the raw data we collected from it. I helped with the information gathering for the strategic planning process in 2021. And my role was to create, distribute, and compile the data from the public feedback survey, which had over 850 responses. The survey was unique because our target was both library users and non-users. And we overwhelmingly learned that people were requesting services from us that we actually already offered. So we needed to work on our marketing. And then while I've been in the actual marketing role, I have done 2 smaller scale surveys. So we did a program survey in February of last year, and that was distributed at all program attendees during that 1 week. And so from that survey, we learned that many patrons attend programs in their home branch. And we learned that word of mouth and online were our best advertising methods for primarily families with young children. And then we did a services survey in August of last year, so during our busiest season. And that was given to all visitors who borrowed material that week. And from that survey, we learned which services our regular library users are still unfamiliar with a lot of people saying our digital services were unfamiliar to them. So that's what helped inform the creation of this plan. So next slide, please. So this is an overview of the plan. It's just broken down into a few categories. So we have our demographics, what we hope to achieve with the plan, which is our objectives, the message we're going to say, and then the brand voice is how we are going to say that, how we're going to achieve our goals, and our assessment is our benchmarks for success. So next slide, please. So our target audience is all residents of Haliburton County. Anyone who's paying taxes is welcome to use the library, and anyone just visiting obviously is welcome to come in and use the library. I'm sure counselors are familiar with the makeup of Haliburton County already, but
Can I just stop you for a second?
Yeah.
When you say all residents of Haliburton County,
yeah,
do you mean full-time or permanent and seasonal?
oh yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So we have a fast-growing population. That's the summarizing what's on the slide there. We have a fast-growing population, and with half of our population over 59, because our median age is 59, so it's an older population. Okay, and next slide. So our objectives with this plan. So the goal with our marketing efforts is to encourage information-seeking behavior and promote the library as a free communal space with minimal barriers to access. We also want to expand local knowledge of what the library offers, and we want to create fans who tell their friends, oh, the library does that. And actually a great example of that recently is the radon kits. We've had people coming in and saying, I had a neighbor who used it and it was fantastic and I'd love to borrow it. Like he learned, you know, he has radon or whatever. So we want to encourage that sort of community knowledge sharing. And next slide,
That's a
please.
picture of Dave Burton, the mayor of
Yeah.
Highlands East, and Philip.
And Phil Agnew. And he comes into the Wilberforce Library. He couldn't access
the
it.
name Agnews.
Yeah.
That's one of the part of the family, Philip.
Yeah, so he couldn't access the old library actually. So when they built a new one, it was a success story that he could come in now and browse the shelves.
If ever you're going to wander into Agnews and he's there, make sure you have a little bag of rum balls. He loves rum balls.
Oh, really?
You can tell I live there. Right?
Yeah, yeah. Next slide, please. Okay, so our message. HCPL believes that each patron of the library is unique and important. We promote open and equitable access to information for an inclusive and welcoming space for all, and we provide significant economic value to the community, which was just proven to us in the previous presentation. So these are actually 4 things that are pulled from our official statement of values. So you can find it on our website. And these are the 4 points that the marketing plan intends to focus on. Next slide, please. And as I said, the brand voice document is our guidelines for how we're going to convey our message. So this guide is something that would be referenced by staff writing an article or posting on social media. And it gives them a framework for the tone and wording to use that aligns with our goals and values. So the main goal of this document is to encourage a focus on local content. We want to encourage creating community and always be mindful to use simple language and a casual tone so that it's inclusive to everyone. So it just shows you the things to avoid, which is jargon and negativity, and focusing on positivity and inclusive language. Next slide. So how will we achieve this? One of the most important aspects is ensuring our frontline staff continue to offer excellent customer service at every branch. Our staff is a huge part of what makes the library a great resource and a welcoming environment. And this also goes back to the strategic planning process, because we had that written in a ton that the staff is one of the best parts about the library. We are also going to use links to direct people to our website as much as possible. We want all our publications to be consistent with our branding and accessibility standards. and we want to leverage connections with the community to reach more people. And then I just had some photos of of our wonderful branch staff on the slide there. And next slide. So finally, our assessment. So what does success look like? We want to see an increased usage of our e-resources and website. We want to see more people just walking into our branches. We want a consistent presence online and in local publications and using that consistent tone, which is guided by the brand voice. And we want to receive positive feedback from the community, which that's something that Andrea loves to highlight in those Friday updates, is when we hear those great success stories from our patrons and know that we're doing a great job and offering a great service. And last slide, I guess, is just questions. Sorry, I always talk so fast. Great job. Thanks.
Great job, Tess. Thank you very much. Any questions from anybody on the board? Seeing none, thank you. Oh, Paul, go ahead.
I did have one question with implementation, rolling the program out. Is there a short training session for staff members that
That's a good question.
quarterly meeting or do you monitor anything that gets written before it goes out? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, right now, a lot of it is coming through me. So it's easy. Like I do a lot of the social media and stuff, but then the brand voice document is the main one for staff that are taking on the role to reference. So anyone that posts on social media would reference that document going forward. But right now it's mostly me. So it's not
So,
too bad.
okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. You don't have to hang around if you don't want to.
Well, I do have to keep taking minutes. So
She's taken over Melanie's
forgot.
side.
No,
I'm doing double duty.
I forgot about that. At least you're not dragging at me I used to get the monthly lecture on minutes and agendas and everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next item is, now I'll set the stage for this. Remember when we were doing our budget, we were talking about a position who's somebody's leaving that position shortly. And we were going to have to do a job evaluation on that position. And part of Andrea's preparation for our meeting on June 12th, when we talk about our budget restatement based on the direction from the board, is that she wants to do about 5 total job evaluations rather than just that one. Because as you begin to rethink your structure and your organization, you of course rethink people's responsibilities. And with that comes the need for job evaluation. So have I stole your thunder?
That's sort of the first section, but
Okay,
you
go ahead with the rest, okay?
Yeah, so I am laying all the groundwork, doing the research and preparation for a model to present to you on June the 12th. David mentioned that our collections development coordinator, Cheryl Sherwood, would be retiring at the end of May. She let us know a year ago, and so we had that in the budget. We knew she'd been in the role for a long time, and we would need to take a look at that job description. And then because I've been tasked with finding a substantial amount of savings in the wages lines for both for this year and for budget processes going forward. I am looking at all of the options that I can in terms of saving money. So as David mentioned and I mentioned, so the one position will be vacant at the end of this month. Melanie, who you all know, has resigned from the library and is now over at Algonquin Highlands. And so we have that position that has been vacated. And we have the Public Services Manager, Deputy CEO role, which Hillary is doing a wonderful job filling on a temporary basis. And we have 2 branch staff filling Hillary's role, also doing a great job. And so that was all pre-planned to kind of the temporariness to come in line with the June 12th board meeting, where I will present a strategy for savings. So all that to say that we have several positions. We have to move a lot of tasks around between people. So some people will inherit tasks. Hi, Lisa. So we'll have to move around tasks within each of the current job descriptions. So as a point of reference, on Civic Web, all of the current job descriptions for admin team members have been posted. These aren't the new proposed ones. They're just in case anyone wants to go through and look at what the current jobs are. So I will be I have been and continue to look at, with those vacancies in mind, how we can tweak the different portfolios, perhaps not fill one of the positions in order to find the cost savings that the board is looking for. So I will come to the June meeting with a proposal, but in order to do the costing of that, what I need is the budgetary approval to have job evaluations done, because depending on where we land, because the jobs have been tweaked in the office, that will influence the compensation model. So we'll be able to tell you how much we're saving unless I know based on the new job descriptions.
So based on that, I have a motion. Sorry, Jen, and then Adele, do you have a question?
Possibly.
Okay, Jen, you go first, and if Adele needs to, she can jump in.
So my apologies if I haven't followed the bouncing ball. Maybe you can just tell me in slightly different words. What is the logic of doing evaluations on job descriptions that you're about to change? That's the piece that I'm not connecting with really well.
On the proposed. So these are just what we have currently, and so they'll be on the new jobs to see where
Job
they
evaluation
fall.
is on the new jobs. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Got it. That was the bit that I missed. Thank you. Okay, great.
Okay,
Yeah.
Adele, did you have a question?
So just to confirm what you're saying, so you are going to realign job duties, possibly with less people doing them.
Yeah.
And then you're going to evaluate, you want to hire someone to evaluate
A job,
what those new jobs are worth.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's the county has I think a consultant that regularly does these evaluations. So they look at all of the tasks that are assigned, the proportions, level of responsibility. They come up with some sort of score, and then that's matched with the County of Haliburton wage grid. So because we're going to move around tasks and job responsibilities, they'll fall differently on the grid.
Sure. Okay.
And so in order for me to tell you how much money we would save, we need to know where on the grid people would be falling.
And Andrew's been working with the county HR person on this, and they have advised us about an approximate cost to do this work.
Okay.
And I have a motion to deal with that after Paul asks his question.
The question I have, will the job classification specialist be involved in shuffling some of the roles or the functional parts of the job?
So that part I will be doing.
Okay.
I'm putting forward a proposal.
And this will allow Andrea to say, here's what I'm doing, and here's the cost of what I'm doing, or the savings related to what I'm doing. You need that in order for her to get her work done properly and present to us on June 12th.
The reason I asked the question, if there are some functional similarities where placing a function in a higher level of classification requires greater payment, I just wonder if there's some things that are more aligned that might fit together more appropriately,
Exactly.
thereby reducing the cost.
Yeah.
That's
So
exactly right.
I think there's still, I guess if the HR specialist at the county is helping out with that, but you still may want to confer with a job classification specialist in process.
So I'm gathering all of the information, taking a really hard look at it. I've had meetings where the teams provided input. I met with Ev Fenwick this morning and we'll be continuing to loop her in. I have some information from the county finance department. We provided a spreadsheet with that I can play around with. So if this person works this many hours, this is how much it will cost. So I have an updated version of that from this afternoon. And so, but I do need, because it's beyond the $300 that was already agreed upon, I need the budgetary approval from you to proceed.
Okay, so let me read the motion that be it resolved that Haliburton County Public Library Board approves $1,500 from reserves for an external review of the Haliburton County Public Library admin team job descriptions. So it's a $1,500 request out of reserves to do this piece of work that Andrea stopped speaking about. Any further questions? Cecil, go ahead.
Yeah, so just to follow up on Jen's follow the bouncing ball, what we're going to be doing here is this person for $1,500 is going to be giving us the impact of the changes in terms of how that's going to affect the overall value of that particular job once the job itself has been defined, or because I don't see the point in doing it on one that has not changed because we already have grits for that. So if we change the description of the CEO or the deputy CEO or any of those positions that are listed here, then obviously we need to know what the skill set requirement would be, and then from that, what the projected cost of that particular entity would be. And I understand then how you could then calculate the differential between what it will cost versus what it does cost. Is that correct? Is that what we're spending the $1,500 for?
And it's only admin role that won't change in terms of job responsibilities would be the library courier. So that role wouldn't be one that would need to be reviewed.
So you're right in your suggestion. That's exactly the case. Thank you. Okay, could I have a mover and seconder for the motion, please? If you want to move it, second, it's moved by Adele, seconded by Lisa. By the way, Lisa, welcome. Glad to have you here. Okay, next item is there anything that the members of the councils want to put forward as a municipal part of a municipal roundtable? Anything exciting going on in the four councils? Seeing none, okay, we're going to go to a closed session now. And I'll need a motion for that, and I have it here. Be it resolved that the public, that pursuant to the Public Libraries Act, the Haliburton County Public Library Board enters into a closed session for the following reasons: personnel matter related to an identifiable individual. Moved by Paul. Moved by, second by Walt. Moved by Paul, seconded by Walt. All in favor? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Now we'll go into a
There you go.
Okay. Good thing you guys are smart. I like to move meetings along and have notice. Somebody once said I'd share a hell of a good meeting.
You're right, George.
Maybe not. Maybe not. I was chair of a board once a while ago, and we used to spend a lot of time chit-chatting during the meeting. So I said to the board, okay, here's the deal. We'll get through the business of the meeting, and then you can stay here all night and chit-chat. I don't care. I'm going home. Be resolved, the May 8th, 2024 regular meeting of Haliburton County Library Board now adjourned. Just need a mover for that. Cease moves. Sorry, Adele, I didn't grab him. And we don't need a seconder, and we don't need a motion to adjourn. So we will consider the meeting adjourned. Does anybody want to stay around and have a talk about anything? No? All right. See you at the next meeting, June 12th. I think it is.
Everybody.
Thanks very much. And Walt and